I was sitting in my car outside the country club where our 10th anniversary dinner should have been happening, staring at the reservation confirmation on my phone, when I realized that sometimes the most devastating betrayals come wrapped in perfectly reasonable explanations. The valet had already asked me twice if I needed help, probably wondering why a man in a pressed suit was just sitting there with the engine running, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 hours earlier, I'd been the happiest man in Denver. I'd spent weeks planning this anniversary celebration, even booked the mountain cabin in Breckenridge for the weekend, complete with the hot tub Rachel had been hinting about for months. I'd arranged for Emma to stay with my parents, cleared my entire calendar at Summit Strategies, and even bought that ridiculously expensive watch Rachel had been eyeing at the jewelry store downtown. Everything was perfect. Everything was planned. Everything was about to fall apart in the most spectacular way imaginable. The text message that changed everything had been meant for Tyler, her business partner at Mile High Events. But Rachel's phone had been acting up lately, auto-filling contact names, and instead of sending it to Tyler Martinez, it went to Tyler James, which is what her phone had saved my contact as years ago when we first started dating. The irony wasn't lost on me that technology, which had built my entire career in digital marketing, would be the thing that exposed the ruins of my marriage. The message was simple, direct, and like a knife to the chest. Can't wait for tonight. Tell James the anniversary thing will have to wait. This Denver Tech Summit opportunity is too big to pass up. He'll understand. He always does. Love you. I must have read it 50 times, sitting in my office at Summit Strategies, trying to make the words mean something different, trying to convince myself there was some innocent explanation for why my wife was telling another man she loved him while casually dismissing our 10th wedding anniversary as the anniversary thing. But the more I stared at those words, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my reality. The Denver Tech Summit. I knew exactly what that was. It was the annual conference where all the major corporations came to scout new vendors and sign million-dollar contracts. It was also happening this weekend, the same weekend I'd booked our anniversary getaway. Rachel had mentioned it in passing weeks ago, said it conflicted with our plans, said she'd already committed to us and wouldn't even consider going. But apparently, she'd been considering it. She'd been considering Tyler. I called her immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. When she answered, her voice had that practiced sweetness she used with difficult clients. "Hey, honey, I was just about to call you," she said, and I could hear the bustling noise of her office in the background. "I have some disappointing news about tonight." "Let me guess," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The Denver Tech Summit opportunity is too big to pass up." There was a pause, a long, telling pause where I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how I knew. "James, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "No need to explain, Rachel. I got your message. All of it." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone, replaced by something defensive and cold. "Look, you don't understand the position I'm in here. Tyler and I have been working on landing Meridian Corp for months. They specifically requested us for their annual retreat planning, but they need to meet this weekend. It's a 3-year contract, worth over $2 million. And our anniversary? We can celebrate next weekend, or next month. The business can't wait, James. You of all people should understand that." I did understand. I understood that she'd made her choice, and it wasn't me. I understood that Tyler wasn't just her business partner anymore, if he ever had been, and I understood that the woman I'd been married to for 10 years, the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my daughter, was choosing him over me without even trying to hide it anymore. "You're right," I said quietly. "I do understand." "Great, so we're good? We can do something special next weekend, I promise." "We're perfect, Rachel. Have fun at your summit." I hung up before she could respond and sat there in my office, surrounded by the success I'd built from nothing. Summit Strategies had grown from a one-man operation in our garage to a 15-employee agency with clients across 3 states. The walls were covered with awards, successful campaign posters, and photos from company retreats. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd achieved, And none of it mattered because the person I'd wanted to share it with had been sharing herself with someone else. The next call I made was to my parents to let them know Emma would be coming over earlier than planned. My mother, Linda, had that concerned tone she'd perfected over 30 years of motherhood. "Everything all right, honey? You sound upset." Rachel had a work emergency. Anniversaries postponed. Again? The disapproval in her voice was clear. This wasn't the first time Rachel's work had taken priority over family commitments. "James, you need to have a serious conversation with that girl. Marriage requires 2 people to show up." "I know, Mom. I'll handle it." But I wasn't going to handle it the way everyone expected. I wasn't going to have a heart-to-heart conversation about priorities and commitment. I wasn't going to suggest marriage counseling or ask her to choose between her business and our marriage. I was done being the understanding husband who always accommodated, always compromised, always came second to whatever crisis or opportunity demanded her attention. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned off my phone, locked up the office, and drove to the mountains by myself. The cabin in Breckenridge was everything the photos had promised. Rustic but luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over snow-capped peaks and a hot tub on the deck that steamed in the crisp October air. I'd planned to carry Rachel over the threshold, to surprise her with champagne and the watch, to spend the weekend reconnecting without the constant buzz of phones and emails, and Emma's 8-year-old energy filling every quiet moment. Instead, I sat alone on the deck with a beer, watching the sun set over the mountains, and felt something shift inside me. Not sadness, exactly. Not anger, though that was certainly there. It was clarity. Pure, crystalline clarity about what I needed to do next. I turned my phone back on around midnight and found 17 missed calls from Rachel, 12 text messages that progressed from concerned to annoyed to angry, and 3 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. There was also a notification from the security system at our house showing Rachel arriving home at 11:47 p.m. Apparently, the Denver Tech Summit that was too important to miss had ended by midnight. How convenient. I typed out a single text message and sent it before I could second-guess myself. "Enjoying the solitude. Don't wait up." Her response came immediately, as if she'd been sitting there staring at her phone. "James, where are you? We need to talk. I can explain everything." "No explanation needed. Enjoy your 3-year contract." My phone started ringing immediately, Rachel's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call and turned the phone face down on the table beside me. Then, I opened my laptop and did what I did best. I started researching. Tyler Martinez had been Rachel's business partner for 3 years, ever since she'd decided to expand Mile High Events from a solo operation to a full-service company. He was everything I wasn't. Flashy where I was practical, spontaneous where I was methodical, charming where I was reserved. He drove a red Porsche, lived in a downtown loft with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting, and had the kind of effortless confidence that made people want to follow him into bad decisions. I'd never liked him, but I'd supported Rachel's decision to partner with him because the business had tripled in size since he'd joined. I'd even invested $50,000 of my own money to help them lease a bigger office space and hire additional staff. I'd been the supportive husband, the silent partner who wrote checks and smiled at company parties, while Tyler charmed clients and took credit for ideas that Rachel had spent nights developing. But as I scrolled through his social media profiles, through the Mile High Events website and their recent promotional materials, a different picture began to emerge. The chemistry between them in the professional photos wasn't just professional. The way Rachel looked at him in the candid shots from company events wasn't just collegial. And the timeline of their business trips over the past year corresponded perfectly with the nights Rachel had come home late, claiming she'd been working on proposals or meeting with vendors. I'd been an idiot, a trusting, devoted, completely oblivious idiot. By 3 a.m, I'd made a decision that would have shocked the man I'd been 24 hours earlier. I wasn't going home to fight for my marriage. I wasn't going to compete with Tyler for Rachel's attention. I wasn't going to be the understanding husband who overlooked this betrayal in the name of preserving our family. I was going to disappear. Not literally, of course. I had a daughter to think about, a business to run, responsibilities that couldn't be abandoned on a whim. But I was going to disappear from Rachel's life in every way that mattered. I was going to stop being the reliable backup plan, the safe harbor she could return to after her adventures with Tyler. I was going to force her to live with the choice she'd made. The first step was protecting what was mine. I spent the rest of the night transferring funds, documenting assets, and making copies of every important financial record I could access remotely. Rachel and I had kept mostly separate business accounts, which was about to work very much in my favor. The house was in both our names, but I'd paid the down payment and most of the mortgage from Summit Strategies' revenue. Emma's college fund was in my name alone, a decision I'd made years ago that Rachel had barely noticed at the time. By sunrise, I had a complete picture of our financial situation and a clear plan for protecting myself legally. I also had something else I hadn't expected to find during my midnight research session. I had discovered Sophia. Sophia Chen ran a tech startup called AutoFlow Solutions, a company that specialized in business automation software. Her LinkedIn profile showed a trajectory that impressed even my success-focused mind. MIT computer science degree, 5 years at Google, 2 successful startups sold to major corporations, and now a company that was revolutionizing how small businesses manage their operations. She was exactly the kind of visionary entrepreneur that Summit Strategies loved working with, and based on her company's rapid growth, exactly the kind of client that could transform my business. More importantly, AutoFlow Solutions was looking for a new marketing partner. Their previous agency had apparently failed to deliver on a major campaign, and they were accepting proposals for a complete rebrand and digital marketing overhaul. The contract was worth more than any single client Summit Strategies had ever landed. I drafted a proposal email as the sun came up over the mountains, pouring all my professional expertise and personal frustration into creating something that would be impossible to ignore. Then I sent it, along with my portfolio and a request for a meeting, before I could overthink the decision. The response came back within 2 hours. Mr. James, your timing is impeccable. We've been looking for a marketing partner who understands both traditional business growth and innovative digital strategies. Your portfolio suggests you might be exactly what we need. Would you be available for lunch tomorrow to discuss this opportunity? I have a feeling this could be the beginning of something significant. Sophia Chen, CEO, AutoFlow Solutions. I stared at that email for a long time, particularly the phrase "the beginning of something significant." It felt like more than a business proposition. It felt like a sign that the universe was opening a door just as another one was slamming shut. I replied immediately, confirming the lunch meeting and suggesting we meet at Roasted Peaks, a coffee shop in downtown Denver that I'd always loved, but Rachel had always dismissed as too casual for her taste. It seemed like the perfect place for a new beginning. Then I packed my things, locked up the cabin, and drove back to Denver with the windows down and the music loud, feeling more alive than I had in months. I wasn't running home to salvage my marriage anymore. I wasn't racing back to patch things up with my cheating wife. I was driving towards something new, something that belonged entirely to me. Rachel's car wasn't in the driveway when I pulled up to our house in Highlands Ranch. The security system showed she'd left early that morning and hadn't returned. I let myself in and immediately noticed the changes. Fresh flowers on the kitchen counter, candles lit in the living room, and the expensive bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion sitting open on the dining room table with 2 glasses beside it. She'd been entertaining someone in our house. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. On our anniversary weekend, I walked through the rooms where Emma had taken her first steps, where we'd hosted family Christmas dinners, where I'd proposed to Rachel 5 years before we actually got married. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different now. Contaminated. Like a crime scene where the evidence had been carefully cleaned up, but the violation lingered in the air. I went upstairs to our bedroom and started packing. Not everything, just enough clothes for a few weeks and the personal items that couldn't be replaced. My grandfather's watch, the photo from our honeymoon that I still actually treasured, the first dollar bill Summit Strategies had ever earned, framed and hanging on my side of the closet. As I was packing, my phone buzzed with another text from Rachel. "James, please come home. I made a mistake. We can work through this." I stared at the message, waiting to feel something. Anger, hurt, hope. anything. But all I felt was tired. Tired of being the one who always worked through things, who always understood, who always forgave. Tired of being married to someone who thought our relationship was something that could be put on hold whenever something more interesting came along. I typed back a single word. No. Then I finished packing, grabbed my laptop and the overnight bag I'd packed for our anniversary trip, and walked out of the house I'd called home for 8 years. I didn't leave a note. I didn't take a last look around. I didn't dramatically slam the door or throw my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. I just left. The extended stay hotel near downtown Denver wasn't glamorous, but it was clean, quiet, and completely separate from the life I was walking away from. I checked in under my own name, paid for a month in advance, and settled into a space that was entirely mine. No shared closets, no compromised decorating choices, no reminders of a marriage that had been dying for longer than I'd been willing to admit. That evening, I sat in my temporary living room with takeout Chinese food and a beer, thinking about lunch with Sophia Chen the next day. I thought about what it would be like to build something new from scratch, to work with someone who shared my vision and ambition, to create success without having to compete for attention and respect in my own life. For the first time in years, I was excited about tomorrow. Not because I was hoping someone would choose me, but because I was choosing myself. My phone buzzed one more time before I went to bed. Another message from Rachel. I know you're angry, but running away isn't going to solve anything. Come home and let's talk like adults. I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Rachel still didn't understand. I wasn't running away from anything. I wasn't angry about what she'd done, not anymore. I was simply done. Done being the understanding husband. Done being the reliable fallback option. Done fighting for someone who had clearly decided I wasn't worth fighting for. I was choosing solitude over betrayal, and for the first time in a long time, that choice felt like freedom. The lunch meeting at Roasted Peaks changed everything. Sophia Chen arrived exactly on time, which I appreciated, wearing a sharp black blazer and carrying herself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from genuine achievement rather than borrowed authority. She was beautiful in an understated way, with intelligent dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and a smile that felt earned rather than automatic. We shook hands, and I immediately noticed the firmness of her grip, the way she looked directly at me when she spoke, the complete absence of the performative charm I'd grown so accustomed to with Rachel's business associates. This was someone who didn't need to manipulate or seduce to get what she wanted. She simply excelled. James, thank you for meeting on such short notice, she said as we settled into a corner booth. I have to admit, your proposal intrigued me for reasons beyond just the marketing strategy. Oh? You understand something that most agencies miss entirely. You get that automation isn't about replacing human connection. It's about freeing people to focus on what actually matters. Your portfolio shows campaigns that don't just sell products, they solve real problems for real people. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Recognition. Not just professional acknowledgement, but the sense that someone actually understood what I was trying to accomplish with my work. Rachel had always supported Summit strategies in theory, but she'd never really grasped what drove me about the business beyond the revenue it generated. That means more than you know, I said. I started Summit Strategies because I believed small businesses could compete with corporate giants if they had the right digital strategy, but it only works if you understand the human element behind every click, every conversion, every customer relationship. Sophia nodded, pulling out her tablet and showing me Autoflow's current market position. We're at a crossroads. The software is revolutionary, but our previous marketing team positioned us as just another efficiency tool. They completely missed what makes us different. As she walked me through Autoflow's capabilities, I began to see the potential she was talking about. This wasn't just business automation software. It was a complete ecosystem that could transform how companies operated, freeing up human resources for creativity, strategy, and genuine customer service. The marketing possibilities were endless. What happened with your previous agency? I asked, her expression darkened slightly. They promised the world and delivered stock photography with generic taglines. Worse, they leaked our campaign strategy to a competitor. Cost us 6 months of development advantage, and nearly killed a major partnership. Industrial espionage? More like incompetence and disloyalty. The account manager was dating someone at our biggest competitor. Pillow talk turned into corporate intelligence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was someone else who'd been betrayed by mixing business with misplaced trust. Someone who understood that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones most capable of devastating damage. I can understand why you'd be cautious about trusting a new partner, I said. Actually, that's exactly why I'm considering you. Your reputation for integrity is spotless. I did my research, James. Your clients don't just renew their contracts, they actively refer new business. That kind of loyalty doesn't happen by accident. We spent the next 2 hours diving deep into strategy, target markets, and campaign concepts. Sophia's mind worked at a pace that challenged me to think faster, dig deeper, and come up with solutions I wouldn't have considered in a traditional client meeting. By the time we finished, I had filled 12 pages of notes and felt more energized about work than I had in years. I'd like to propose something unconventional, Sophia said as we prepared to leave. Instead of a traditional agency retainer, what would you think about a partnership structure? Autoflow needs a marketing director who understands our vision, long-term, not just someone who executes campaigns. What exactly are you suggesting? Equity, a real stake in what we're building. I need someone who's invested in our success beyond just billable hours. Someone who thinks like an owner, not a vendor. I stared at her, processing the implications. This wasn't just a client contract. This was an opportunity to build something significant from the ground up, to have a real voice in strategic decisions, to create wealth rather than just income. That's a considerable leap of faith for someone you just met, I said. Maybe. But I've learned to trust my instincts about people, and my instincts tell me you're someone who builds things that last. We agreed to draw up a formal partnership proposal, contingent on a trial project that would demonstrate how our collaboration might work. Sophia wanted to launch a complete rebrand within 6 weeks, coinciding with a major industry conference where Autoflow would be announcing their next software release. It was an aggressive timeline that would require total commitment from both of us. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with another call from Rachel. I let it go to voicemail, but this time I actually listened to the message. James, I know you're upset, but this silent treatment is ridiculous. Emma keeps asking where you are, and I don't know what to tell her. Whatever you think happened between Tyler and me, you're wrong. We're business partners, nothing more. Come home so we can sort this out like rational adults. The gaslighting was almost impressive in its boldness. She was going to pretend that text message had meant something completely innocent, that my concerns were just jealous paranoia, that I was the one being unreasonable by not accepting her explanation. Instead of calling her back, I drove to my parents' house to see Emma. I needed to make sure my daughter was okay, and I needed to start having honest conversations about what was happening in our family. Emma ran to me the moment I walked through the door, wrapping her 8-year-old arms around my waist with the uncomplicated joy that only children can manage. Daddy! Grandma Linda made cookies and we built a fort in the living room and watched 3 movies and she said I could stay up late tonight if you said it was okay. That sounds perfect, sweetheart, I said, lifting her up and spinning her around the way she loved. Are you having fun with Grandma and Grandpa? Yeah, but why didn't Mommy come to get me yesterday like she said she would? My mother appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes full of questions. She called and said there was a work emergency. Asked if Emma could stay another night. Is that what happened, Dad? Did Mommy have to work? I looked into my daughter's trusting face and made a decision that would define how we navigated the next few months. I was going to tell her the truth, but in a way that protected her from the uglier details. Mommy and I are having some problems right now, Em. Adult problems that don't have anything to do with you. Sometimes when adults can't agree on important things, they need some time apart to figure stuff out. Emma's face scrunched up in the way it did when she was trying to understand something complicated. Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents? I don't know yet, sweetheart, but no matter what happens between Mommy and me, we both love you more than anything in the world. That will never change. She nodded solemnly, then brightened. Can I still live in the fort tonight? Absolutely. After Emma went back to her elaborate blanket construction project, my mother and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and I gave her the abbreviated version of what had happened. My mother had never been Rachel's biggest fan, but she'd always been diplomatic about it for Emma's sake. "I can't say I'm surprised," she said finally. "That girl has always been more interested in what she could get from people than what she could give to them. Mom, I'm sorry, but it's true. You've been bending over backwards to accommodate her ambitions for years, and she's never once returned the favor. Remember when you had that opportunity to expand into California, but she didn't want to move because it might hurt her business? Or when you wanted to take that family vacation to Europe, but she said it was too expensive while she was buying $1,000 handbags?" I had forgotten about both of those incidents, but now they came rushing back along with dozens of others. The pattern had been there all along. I'd just been too invested in making the marriage work to see it clearly. "What are you going to do?" my mother asked. "I'm going to build something new. Something that belongs to me." "Good. It's about time." That evening, I worked on the autoflow proposal from my hotel room, diving deep into market research and competitive analysis. The more I learned about the industry, the more excited I became about the potential for what Sophia and I could accomplish together. This wasn't just about landing a big client. This was about positioning myself at the forefront of a technological shift that would reshape how businesses operated. My phone rang around 9 p.m. Rachel again. This time, I answered. "Finally," she said, and I could hear the relief and irritation in her voice. "James, where are you? I came home and half your clothes are gone. I'm exactly where I need to be." "What is that supposed to mean?" "Look, I know you're upset about the anniversary dinner, but you're blowing this completely out of proportion. Tyler and I landed the Meridian contract. It's going to change everything for Mile High events. Congratulations." "That's it? Congratulations? James, this is huge for us, for our family. This contract means financial security for Emma's future." "No, Rachel. This contract means financial security for your future and Tyler's future. It has nothing to do with us anymore." There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to the tone she used when she was trying to manage a difficult client. "Okay, I can hear that you're really hurt. I understand that. But can we please talk about this in person? Marriage is about working through problems together, not running away when things get complicated." "You're absolutely right," I said. "Marriage is about working through problems together. It's about making each other a priority, even when other opportunities present themselves. It's about trust and loyalty and putting your family first when it matters most." "Exactly. So come home and let's work through this." "But Rachel, you already made your choice. You chose Tyler and the Denver Tech Summit over our anniversary. You chose your business partnership over our marriage. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just accepting the reality of where your priorities lie." "That's not..." "James, you're being completely unreasonable. One work commitment doesn't mean I don't love you." "One work commitment?" "Rachel, when was the last time you turned down a business opportunity for our family? When was the last time you chose us over Mile High events?" She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "I work hard for our family," she said finally. "No, you work hard for yourself, and that's fine, but let's not pretend it's the same thing." "So what? You're just going to abandon 8 years of marriage because I had to work one weekend?" "I'm not abandoning anything. I'm just done fighting for someone who's already moved on." I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone to silent. Then I went back to work on the autoflow proposal, channeling all my energy into something that actually had a future. The next morning, I got a call from Marcus, my younger brother. He was a lawyer specializing in family law, and he'd been following the dissolution of several mutual friends' marriages over the past few years. "Dad told me what's going on," he said without preamble. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in months, actually." "Good. Because I need to ask you some practical questions. Have you thought about what you want this to look like legally?" "Not really. I've been focused on protecting my assets and making sure Emma's taken care of." "Smart. But James, you need to start thinking about the end game here. Do you want to try to save the marriage, or are you done?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that question directly, and the answer came without hesitation. "I'm done." "Okay. Then we need to talk strategy. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, which works in your favor. But if you can prove adultery, it might impact spousal support and asset division. I can prove it. How? I told him about the text message, about the timeline of Rachel's late nights that corresponded with mile-high events' supposed client, meetings, about the fresh flowers and wine glasses in our house while I was in Breckenridge. That's a good start, but we need more. Do you have access to phone records, credit card statements, anything that shows a pattern? I have everything. We've shared accounts for years. Perfect. Start documenting everything, but don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. Just collect evidence of what's already available to you legally. We talked for another hour about custody arrangements, property division, and timeline. Marcus recommended a private investigator who specialized in adultery cases, someone who could gather evidence professionally and discreetly. One more thing, Marcus said as we wrapped up. Don't tell Rachel you're planning to file for divorce. Let her think you're just taking some time to cool off. The element of surprise will work in your favor when we serve papers. That afternoon, I met with the private investigator, a former police detective named Sarah Reynolds, who ran a small but highly regarded firm. She was exactly what I'd hoped for. Professional, thorough, and completely unsentimental about her work. Cheating spouse cases are pretty straightforward, she said after I'd explained the situation. The hard part is usually convincing the betrayed partner to accept what they're seeing. You've already done that work yourself. She outlined a plan that would document Rachel and Tyler's relationship over the next few weeks, gathering photographic evidence and establishing a clear pattern of behavior. The retainer was expensive, but Summit Strategies could absorb the cost easily. How long do these investigations usually take? I asked. In cases like this, where the subjects aren't being particularly careful about concealment, 2 to 3 weeks max, sometimes less if they're as brazen as you're describing. I left Sarah's office feeling like I was finally taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. For the first time since discovering Rachel's betrayal, I had a clear plan that put me in the driver's seat. That evening, I received an email from Sophia with the formal partnership proposal. The terms were even more generous than I'd expected. A 20% equity stake in Autoflow in exchange for becoming their chief marketing officer, plus a base salary that was double what I currently paid myself from Summit Strategies. The equity would vest over 4 years, but even the first year's value would exceed anything I'd ever earned. More importantly, the proposal included a clause that would allow me to maintain Summit Strategies as a separate entity, handling Autoflow's marketing while continuing to serve my existing clients. It was the best of both worlds. Financial security, equity upside, and creative control. I called Sophia immediately. This is incredibly generous, I said. Are you sure Autoflow's board will approve these terms? I am the board, James. One of the advantages of maintaining majority control. In that case, I accept. Excellent. Can you start Monday? We have a lot of work to do before the industry conference. Monday works perfectly. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room looking out at the Denver skyline, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Optimism about the future. Excitement about what I was building rather than anxiety about what I was losing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey James, this is Tyler. I think there's been some misunderstanding about what happened this weekend. Would you be willing to grab a beer and talk man to man? I stared at the message for a long time, imagining the conversation Tyler wanted to have. The explanations, the justifications, the attempt to convince me that what I'd seen wasn't what I thought it was. The request for understanding, for discretion, for the sake of everyone involved. Instead of responding, I forwarded the message to Sarah Reynolds with a note. Subject just made contact. Thought you should know. Her response came back immediately. Perfect. Shows consciousness of guilt. Keep all communications from both subjects. This is going to be easier than I thought. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop to start working on Autoflow's rebrand. For the first time in months, I had somewhere important to be on Monday morning. Somewhere that had nothing to do with Rachel, nothing to do with damage control, nothing to do with trying to fix something that had been broken for longer than I'd been willing to admit. I was building something new, and it was going to be extraordinary. Monday morning at Autoflow Solutions felt like stepping into a different universe. The office occupied 2 floors of a sleek downtown building with exposed brick walls, standing desks, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the Front Range. Everything about the space communicated innovation, efficiency, and forward momentum. It was exactly the kind of environment I'd dreamed of working in when I first started Summit Strategies. Sophia introduced me to the team with the kind of genuine enthusiasm I hadn't experienced in years. David Chen, her chief technology officer, and younger brother greeted me with a firm handshake and immediately launched into an explanation of Autoflow's latest algorithmic improvements. Rebecca Martinez, the head of operations, showed me market penetration data that made my marketing mind race with possibilities. These weren't just employees following orders. These were believers, innovators, people who understood they were building something revolutionary. The conference is in 3 weeks, Sophia explained as we settled into her office for our first official strategy session. We're announcing Autoflow 3.0, which will fundamentally change how small businesses handle customer relationship management. The product is incredible, but we need a marketing campaign that matches its potential. I spent the morning reviewing their current materials, and Sophia had been right about their previous agency's inadequacy. Generic stock photos, buzzword-heavy, copy that said nothing meaningful, and a brand identity that made revolutionary software look like another boring business tool. We're starting from scratch, I told the assembled team. Everything you've seen before, forget it. We're going to build a campaign that actually reflects what Autoflow does and why it matters. The next 2 weeks blurred together in the best possible way. 18-hour days that felt energizing rather than exhausting. Creative sessions that sparked new ideas instead of recycling old ones, and the satisfaction of watching something exceptional take shape. Sophia and I developed a rhythm that felt almost telepathic. She would start explaining a concept, and I would finish her thought with a marketing angle she hadn't considered. I would propose a campaign direction, and she would immediately see how to expand it beyond what I'd imagined. Working with someone who matched your energy and elevated your thinking was intoxicating. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have a true intellectual and creative partner. Someone who pushed you to be better, rather than asking you to be less. The breakthrough came during our third late-night brainstorming session. We were struggling with how to communicate Autoflow's complexity without overwhelming potential customers, when Sophia made an offhand comment about how the software was like having a brilliant assistant who never slept, never forgot anything, and never had personal drama that interfered with their work. That's it, I said, jumping up from the conference table. We don't sell software, we sell freedom. Freedom from tedious tasks, freedom from human error, freedom to focus on what actually matters in your business. Freedom to live, Sophia added, her eyes lighting up with understanding. We built the entire campaign around that concept. Autoflow, work like you're free, became our tagline, with visuals that showed business owners doing what they loved: hiking with their families, brainstorming in coffee shops, traveling to new markets instead of being chained to administrative tasks. The centerpiece was a video series called After Autoflow, featuring real small business owners talking about how automation had changed their lives. Not their businesses, their lives. The restaurant owner who could finally attend his daughter's soccer games. The consultant who took her first vacation in 5 years. The architect who had time to mentor young designers because Autoflow handled his project management. This is brilliant, Rebecca said when we presented the campaign to the full team. It's not about the technology, it's about what the technology makes possible. Exactly, I said. People don't buy software. They buy better versions of their lives. As the campaign took shape, my phone continued buzzing with increasingly desperate messages from Rachel. She'd progressed through anger, confusion, bargaining, and was now settling into a pattern of emotional manipulation that I recognized but was no longer susceptible to. Emma asks about you every day. She doesn't understand why Daddy isn't coming home. Is this really what you want for our daughter? I spoke with a lawyer today. Did you know that abandoning your family can affect custody arrangements? I'm trying to protect you here, but you need to come home and talk. Tyler told me he texted you. He feels terrible about the misunderstanding. We all just want to clear the air and move past this. I forwarded each message to Sarah Reynolds and deleted them without responding. The private investigator had been gathering evidence for 2 weeks, and the picture she was painting was even worse than I'd suspected. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Sarah reported during our weekly check-in. Dinner at expensive restaurants, overnight stays at his loft, weekend trips they think no one knows about. I have photos, credit card records, hotel receipts. This isn't a recent development, James. Based on the evidence, I'd say they've been involved for at least 8 months. 8 months. That meant the affair had started right around the time Rachel had insisted we needed to invest more money in Mile High Events expansion. The same expansion that had brought Tyler into our lives and my money into their business. There's something else, Sarah continued. I did some digging into Tyler's background. He's not the successful entrepreneur he presents himself as. Mile High Events is his 3rd business partnership in 5 years. The other 2 ended badly, with his partners accusing him of misappropriating funds and stealing clients. Is Rachel in legal trouble? Hard to say, but she might be if she's not careful. This guy has a pattern of using romantic relationships to gain access to business resources, then moving on when things get complicated. I felt an unexpected flash of something that might have been sympathy for Rachel, followed immediately by the realization that she'd made her choices with full knowledge of the risks. I wasn't responsible for protecting her from the consequences anymore. How much more evidence do you need? I asked. I have enough to support adultery claims in divorce proceedings. But if you want to really make an impact, I'd recommend waiting until they make another major public appearance together. The industry conference would be perfect. Maximum visibility, maximum damage to their professional reputations. The conference, where Rachel and Tyler would undoubtedly be presenting themselves as the dynamic duo behind Mile High Events' success, using my investment money to fund their booth and promotional materials. Let's wait for the conference, I decided. Meanwhile, Autoflow's rebrand was generating buzz in the industry before we'd even officially launched it. Tech blogs were speculating about our mysterious campaign teasers. Potential customers were calling to request early access to Autoflow 3.0. Competitors were scrambling to understand what we were planning. I've never seen pre-launch excitement like this, David told me as we reviewed registration numbers for our conference presentation. We're booked solid for product demonstrations, and half the requests specifically mention wanting to meet the marketing team behind the new campaign. The night before the conference, Sophia and I worked until midnight, putting finishing touches on our presentation. The office was empty except for us, and the city lights created a backdrop that felt almost cinematic. I have a confession, Sophia said as we finally wrapped up the slides. When I first contacted you, I was taking a huge gamble. Autoflow needed a marketing miracle, and I was betting everything on someone I'd never met. What made you take that risk? Your reputation, partly, but mostly something I saw in your proposal that I don't see often in this business. Which was integrity. You weren't trying to oversell or make promises you couldn't keep. You were just offering to do excellent work for a fair price. In my experience, people who approach business that way approach everything else the same way. I looked at her across the conference table. This brilliant woman who'd taken a chance on me when my life was falling apart, who'd given me the opportunity to build something meaningful again. I should probably mention that my life is somewhat complicated right now, I said. How complicated? Divorce complicated. My wife has been having an affair with her business partner for months. I found out 2 weeks before you and I met. Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Is that why you were available for lunch on such short notice? Actually, yes. I was supposed to be celebrating my 10th wedding anniversary that weekend instead of researching potential clients. And instead, you sent me the best marketing proposal I've ever received. That's either incredibly professional or slightly unhinged. Maybe both. She laughed, and the sound filled the empty office with warmth. Well, their loss is definitely my gain. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're going through that. Betrayal by someone you trust is devastating. You sound like you know from experience. I do. My previous business partner didn't just steal my ideas, he convinced half our development team to leave and start a competing company. Used my own code to build a product that directly competed with mine. What did you do? I built something better. And then I made sure everyone in the industry knew exactly what he'd done. He's working at a tech support call center now. There was something quietly fierce in her voice that I found both impressive and reassuring. Sophia Chen was not someone who took betrayal lightly, and she was definitely not someone who let people walk over her. Speaking of making sure people know what happened, she continued. Are you planning to expose your wife's affair publicly? The thought has crossed my mind. The conference would be perfect timing. Maximum industry visibility. Impossible to spin or deny. That's exactly what my private investigator suggested. Smart woman. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see the truth. The next morning, the Colorado Convention Center was buzzing with activity. The annual Rocky Mountain Business Innovation Conference drew entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders from across the region. Autoflow had invested in a premium booth location, right across the main aisle from where Mile High Events was showcasing their latest corporate event planning packages. I hadn't seen Rachel in person for 3 weeks, and the sight of her hit me differently than I'd expected. Not with longing or regret, but with a strange sense of detachment. She looked beautiful, professionally styled and confidently engaging with potential clients. But she felt like someone I'd known a long time ago rather than someone I'd shared a bed with for 8 years. Tyler was working the booth beside her, and their chemistry was obvious to anyone paying attention. The way they stood just slightly too close, the brief touches that lingered a moment too long, the shared looks that communicated private jokes and intimate understanding. They're not exactly subtle, are they? Sophia observed as we set up our display materials. No, they're not. Our booth began attracting attention immediately. The "Work Like You're Free" campaign materials drew people in, but it was the live demonstrations of Autoflow 3.0 that converted them into believers. Business after business owners saw their administrative nightmares solved in real time, watched their workflows streamline before their eyes, understood immediately how the software could transform their operations. By noon, we had collected more qualified leads than Autoflow had generated in the previous 6 months combined. "This is insane," David whispered to me during a brief lull between demonstrations. "We're going to need to expand our customer service team just to handle the implementation requests." "Good problem to have," I replied, watching Rachel across the aisle as she noticed the crowd around our booth for the first time. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something that looked like panic as she realized who was responsible for Autoflow's sudden prominence in the industry. She said something to Tyler, who looked over at our booth with obvious irritation. "Trouble in paradise?" Sophia asked, following my gaze. "Just the beginning." Rachel appeared at our booth 20 minutes later, wearing her brightest professional smile and speaking in the overly cheerful tone she used when she was trying to manage a crisis. "James, what a wonderful surprise to see you here. I had no idea Summit Strategies was working with Autoflow Solutions." "Hello, Rachel. How's the conference treating you?" "Oh, you know how it is. Busy, productive, lots of potential new clients." She glanced around our booth, taking in the crowds, the enthusiastic conversations, the obvious success of our presentation. "This campaign is really impressive. Very creative." "Thank you. I'd love to introduce you to Tyler, if you have a moment. He's been wanting to clear up any misunderstandings from a few weeks ago." "I don't think that's necessary." "James, please. We're all adults here. Whatever you think happened between Tyler and me, you're wrong. We're business partners. Nothing more." The Denver Tech Summit was exactly what I said it was. A crucial business opportunity. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw desperation beneath the professional facade. She knew I knew the truth, but she was still trying to manipulate the situation, still trying to control the narrative. "Rachel, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm not confused, and I'm not interested in explanations. I've moved on." "Moved on to what?" Before I could answer, Sophia appeared beside me carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing a smile that could have powered the convention center. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, handing me one of the cups and extending her other hand to Rachel. "I'm Sophia Chen, CEO of Autoflow Solutions. You must be Rachel. James has told me so much about you." Rachel shook Sophia's hand automatically, but I could see her calculating, trying to figure out exactly what my relationship with this beautiful, successful woman might be. "It's lovely to meet you," Rachel said carefully. "I hope James is taking good care of your marketing needs." "Oh, he's doing much more than that," Sophia replied with perfect innocence. "James is our new chief marketing officer and equity partner. We're building something incredible together." The word together hung in the air like a challenge. Rachel's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and jealous underneath. "That's wonderful," Rachel managed. "I'm sure you'll be very successful." "We already are," Sophia said simply. "James, should we get ready for the afternoon presentation? We have quite an audience waiting." As Rachel walked back to her booth, I saw her pull out her phone and start typing frantically. Probably texting Tyler, probably trying to figure out what this development meant for their situation. "That was masterfully done," I told Sophia. "I learned a long time ago that the best way to handle territorial behavior is to make your own territory very clear." The afternoon presentation was everything we'd hoped for and more. Standing room, only crowd, enthusiastic questions, and immediate interest from 3 major clients who wanted to discuss enterprise-level implementations. But the real victory wasn't professional. The real victory was watching Rachel and Tyler realize that I hadn't just survived their betrayal. I had thrived because of it. Their affair had freed me to pursue opportunities I never would have considered if I'd been focused on saving our marriage. Their choice to put their relationship first had allowed me to put myself first for the first time in years. As the conference wound down, Sarah Reynolds called with an update. "I have everything we need," she reported. "Photos from last night's dinner, hotel records from this morning, and a particularly damning video of them arguing in the parking garage about how to handle your new business success. Want to hear the audio?" "Not necessary. Just send everything to Marcus so he can prepare the divorce papers." "Will do. And James, congratulations on the conference. The AutoFlow presentation is already trending on LinkedIn." That evening, Sophia and I celebrated at a rooftop restaurant overlooking downtown Denver. The view was spectacular, the wine was excellent, and the conversation was everything I'd forgotten business dinners could be: intelligent, engaging, and full of possibilities. "I have a proposal," Sophia said as we finished dessert. "Another one?" "We need to expand faster than originally planned. The response today exceeded every projection we had. I want to open offices in 3 new markets within 6 months. That's ambitious. It's necessary. But it means I need someone I can trust completely to handle the marketing expansion. Someone who thinks like an owner, because they are an owner. What are you suggesting?" "Move your equity vesting schedule up. Instead of 4 years, let's do it in 2. And let's increase your ownership stake to 30%. I stared at her, processing what she was offering. In 2 years, if AutoFlow continued growing at its current pace, that equity stake would be worth millions. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've learned that the difference between good business and great business is finding the right partners and treating them like partners. You're not just my marketing director, James. You're the reason AutoFlow is about to become a major player in this industry." "Sophia, that's incredibly generous, but are you sure? We've only been working together for 3 weeks. 3 weeks that completely transform my company. Besides, I told you I trust my instincts about people. My instincts tell me you're someone worth betting on." We shook hands across the table, cementing a partnership that felt like so much more than a business arrangement. It felt like the foundation of something that could change both our lives. As I drove back to my hotel that night, my phone buzzed, with a text from Rachel. "We need to talk, tonight. It's important." For the first time in weeks, I actually responded. "There's nothing left to talk about. Have a good evening, Rachel." Her reply came immediately. "Please, James, I know about Sophia. Don't make a mistake you'll regret." I laughed out loud in the empty car. Rachel still thought this was about competing for my attention, about making me jealous, about winning me back through manipulation and threats. She had no idea that I was already gone, that I'd been building a new life while she'd been destroying our old one, that her betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to my career and my future. I turned off my phone and went to sleep, planning tomorrow's strategy session with Sophia, excited about the expansion plans we discussed, and grateful for the clarity that came from knowing exactly where I belonged. The breaking point came, exactly 1 week after the conference, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, but ended with my entire world shifting permanently. I was reviewing AutoFlow's latest client onboarding metrics when Marcus called with news that changed everything. "The papers are ready. he said without preamble. But before we serve them, you need to know what Sarah's investigation uncovered. It's bigger than adultery, James. Much bigger. I stepped out of the Autoflow offices and walked to the parking garage for privacy. Something in my brother's tone suggested this conversation required complete attention. Tyler's been systematically draining Mile High Events accounts, Marcus continued. We're talking about embezzlement on a massive scale. The money Rachel thinks they're earning from new contracts, it's actually coming from existing client deposits and your original investment. They're running a sophisticated shell game that's about to collapse spectacularly. The implications hit me immediately. How long before it all falls apart? Sarah estimates 2 months, maybe 3 if they're careful. But here's the kicker: Tyler's already setting up Rachel to take the fall. He's been structuring transactions to make it look like she authorized the transfers. When this thing implodes, she'll be the one facing criminal charges while he disappears with whatever cash he can extract. I felt something I hadn't expected. A surge of protective anger on Rachel's behalf. Despite everything she'd done to our marriage, despite the betrayal and lies, she didn't deserve to be destroyed by someone else's criminal scheme. Does she know? Based on the financial records Sarah obtained, absolutely not. Rachel's been signing documents Tyler prepares without reading them carefully. She trusts him completely, which is exactly what he's counting on. What are my options here? Legally, you file for divorce, claim your assets, and let the embezzlement investigation proceed independently. Rachel's financial crimes aren't your responsibility once you're divorced. And morally? Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's not a legal question, James. That's something you have to decide for yourself. I stood in the parking garage for 20 minutes after hanging up, staring at the Denver skyline and wrestling with a decision that would define who I was as a person. Rachel had betrayed our marriage, chosen Tyler over our family, and dismissed our anniversary like it meant nothing. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences, but she hadn't chosen to be the victim of a criminal conspiracy. That evening, I drove to our house in Highlands Ranch for the first time since I'd moved out. Rachel's car was in the driveway, but Tyler's red Porsche was nowhere to be seen. I used my key to let myself in, feeling like a stranger in rooms that had once been home. Rachel appeared in the kitchen doorway, clearly shocked to see me. She'd lost weight over the past month, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. James, what are you doing here? We need to talk, and you need to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. She followed me into the living room, her expression shifting between hope and wariness. I sat across from her in the chair I'd occupied for countless family movie nights and Emma's bedtime story sessions. Tyler is stealing from Mile High Events, I said without preamble. He's been embezzling client funds and structuring the theft to make you legally responsible. When the scheme collapses, you'll be the one facing federal charges while he disappears. Rachel stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. That's ridiculous. Tyler would never. Rachel, I have bank records, transfer documentation, and witness statements. Tyler has stolen over $400,000 from your business, including the $50,000 I invested. He's been using new client deposits to cover operating expenses while funneling the real revenue into personal accounts you don't have access to. That's impossible. I review our financials every month. You review summaries that Tyler prepares. When was the last time you actually looked at raw bank statements or spoke directly with your accountant? Her expression began to change as she processed the implications. Tyler handles most of the financial management because he has more experience with. Rachel, he's been forging your signature on transfer authorizations. The FBI considers you a co-conspirator in a federal embezzlement case. The color drained from her face. FBI? I pulled out my phone and showed her photos Sarah had taken of Tyler meeting with a known money laundering specialist, documents that detailed his previous business failures, and bank records that painted an undeniable picture of systematic theft. Oh my God, she whispered, scrolling through the evidence. Oh my God, James, what have I done? You trusted the wrong person. But more importantly, what are you going to do about it now? Rachel began crying. Not the manipulative tears she'd used during our marriage fights, but the raw, terrified sobs of someone realizing their entire life was about to implode. I don't know. I don't know what to do. If what you're saying is true, I could go to prison. Emma could lose both parents. Everything we've built. Everything you've built with Tyler, you mean? She looked up at me through her tears. Why are you telling me this? After everything I've done to you, to our marriage. Why would you warn me? I considered the question carefully before answering, because despite everything that's happened between us, you're still Emma's mother. And because no one deserves to be destroyed by someone else's criminal scheme, not even someone who destroyed their own marriage. What should I do? Turn him in before he can finish setting you up. Cooperate with the FBI investigation. Return whatever stolen money you can recover. Hire the best criminal defense attorney you can afford, and pray that your cooperation is worth more to prosecutors than your conviction. Rachel wiped her eyes and looked at me with something that might have been respect. You could have just let this happen. You could have watched me go to prison and gotten everything you wanted in the divorce. That's not who I am, Rachel, and it's not who I want Emma to remember her father being. She nodded slowly. I'll call my attorney first thing tomorrow. But James, about us, about our marriage. There is no us anymore. There's no marriage to save. But there might still be time to save you from Tyler's scheme. I stood to leave, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Rachel, but because I'd chosen to be the kind of person I could respect. James, she called as I reached the door. Thank you. For Emma. For everything. I know I don't deserve your help after what I've done. No, you don't. But Emma deserves to have her mother around to raise her. The next few weeks unfolded, exactly as Marcus had predicted. Rachel contacted the FBI and provided evidence of Tyler's embezzlement scheme. Tyler was arrested at his downtown loft while trying to transfer the last of the stolen funds to an offshore account. The Mile High Events scandal made headlines across Denver's business community, with Rachel portrayed as either a victim or an accomplice depending on which news outlet was reporting. Meanwhile, Autoflow Solutions continued its meteoric rise. The 3 new office locations Sophia had proposed were already under construction, and our client waiting list had grown to over 200 companies. The equity stake that had seemed generous a month ago was beginning to look like one of the smartest business decisions I'd ever made. More importantly, my relationship with Sophia was evolving beyond professional partnership into something deeper and more meaningful. We worked together with an intuitive understanding that felt almost supernatural. She anticipated my strategies before I finished explaining them. I solved marketing challenges she hadn't even realized she was facing. The chemistry between us was obvious to everyone in the office, but we'd been careful to maintain professional boundaries while my divorce proceedings were ongoing. The Tyler Martinez trial is set for next month, Marcus informed me during one of our weekly legal updates. Rachel's cooperation deal went through. She'll testify against him in exchange for immunity from prosecution. She's also agreed to pay full restitution to the embezzlement victims, which means liquidating most of Mile High Events' assets. What does that mean for my divorce case? It means Rachel has almost no money left to fight you on asset division. She's desperate to settle quickly and quietly to avoid more negative publicity. You can basically write your own terms. I thought about the woman who'd once been my wife, now facing financial ruin and professional disgrace because she'd trusted the wrong person. There was a certain poetic justice to it, but also a sadness for the dreams and ambitions that had been destroyed by Tyler's greed. I want generous custody terms, I told Marcus. Emma spends weekdays with Rachel and weekends with me. I'll pay child support even though I don't legally have to. And I want the house sold with proceeds split equally. James, you're entitled to much more than that. Given the adultery evidence and Rachel's current financial situation, you could take everything. I don't want everything. I want Emma to have stability, and I want to move forward with my life. Revenge doesn't interest me anymore. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday afternoon in October, exactly 2 months after I'd discovered Rachel's betrayal. The proceeding took less than an hour, with both attorneys presenting terms that had been negotiated in advance. Rachel looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of everything that had happened. She signed the papers without argument and left the courthouse without speaking to me. I walked out of that building feeling like I'd closed a chapter of my life that had ended long before I'd been willing to admit it. Not with anger or bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd handled an impossible situation with integrity. That evening, Sophia and I had dinner at the same rooftop restaurant, where we'd celebrated the conference success. But this time, the conversation wasn't about business expansion or marketing strategies. "How do you feel?" she asked as we watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. "Free," I said, and realized it was completely true. For the first time in years, I feel completely free to build whatever kind of life I want. "And what kind of life do you want?" I looked across the table at this remarkable woman who'd taken a chance on me when my world was falling apart, who'd given me the opportunity to discover what I was truly capable of achieving. "I want to build something extraordinary with someone extraordinary. I want to create success that we share equally. I want to wake up every morning excited about what we're going to accomplish together." Sophia smiled, the kind of smile that changed everything. "That sounds like exactly the kind of life I want too." She reached across the table and took my hand, and I felt the last piece of my old life finally fall away. Rachel and Tyler had destroyed our marriage, but they'd inadvertently freed me to find something infinitely better. Their betrayal had been the catalyst for the most successful and fulfilling period of my professional life. "There's something I should probably mention," Sophia said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "What's that?" "Autoflow just received an acquisition offer from Meridian Corp. The same company Rachel thought she was going to land as a client. They want to buy us for $45 million. I stared at her, calculating what my 30% equity stake would be worth. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Which means you're about to become a very wealthy man, James. The question is, what do you want to do with that wealth?" I thought about Emma's college fund, about the kind of opportunities I could provide for my daughter's future. I thought about the freedom to start new companies, to take risks, to build something even bigger than Autoflow. I thought about the life I could create with someone who understood ambition and integrity in equal measure. "I want to build an empire," I said, "with you." Sophia squeezed my hand tighter. "Then let's get started." 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the newly constructed Autoflow headquarters, watching Emma run excitedly between the interactive displays that demonstrated our latest software innovations. The building was a testament to what focused ambition could accomplish when paired with the right partner and unlimited creative freedom. "Daddy, this is so cool," Emma called out, her 8-year-old enthusiasm infectious as she watched a holographic presentation about business automation. "Is this really your company?" "Our company," I corrected, glancing at Sophia, who was explaining the display's technical features with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed sharing knowledge. "And yes, sweetheart, we built all of this." The Meridian acquisition had closed 3 weeks ago, making Autoflow a subsidiary with complete operational independence and unlimited expansion resources. My equity stake had translated into a sum that guaranteed Emma's financial security for life, while giving me the capital to pursue ventures I'd only dreamed about during my marriage to Rachel. More importantly, the success had validated every decision I'd made since that devastating anniversary weekend. Choosing Solitude over fighting for someone who'd already chosen someone else had led to opportunities I never could have imagined, while trapped in a relationship that had been slowly suffocating my potential. "Mr. Thompson, the team is ready for the final presentation," Rebecca announced, approaching with the kind of professional excitement that had become Autoflow's signature energy. Today marked the launch of our newest innovation, a comprehensive business management platform that would revolutionize how companies handled everything, from customer relations to financial planning. The software represented 18 months of development and the culmination of everything we'd learned about what businesses actually needed versus what they thought they wanted. "Emma, would you like to see where Daddy and Sophia work their magic?" I asked, taking my daughter's hand as we headed toward the executive conference room. The presentation went flawlessly. Autoflow's leadership team demonstrated capabilities that had our potential clients leaning forward in their chairs, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and customization options. We weren't just selling software anymore. We were offering complete business transformation. Afterward, as the conference room emptied and Emma played quietly with her tablet in the corner, Sophia and I reviewed the day's success metrics. 12. Major clients had signed contracts on the spot, with dozens more requesting detailed proposals for enterprise-level implementations. "You know what the best part of today was?" Sophia asked, closing her laptop and moving to stand beside me at the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Denver. The revenue projections that just guaranteed our next round of expansion funding? No. She smiled, that same smile that had captivated me during our first lunch meeting at Roasted Peaks. It was watching you with Emma, seeing how proud she is of what you've accomplished, knowing that she's growing up with a father who chose to build something meaningful rather than accepting something mediocre. I pulled Sophia closer, marveling at how completely my life had transformed. The man who'd sat alone in a hotel room 6 months ago, devastated by his wife's betrayal, felt like someone from a different lifetime. That version of myself had been focused on salvaging something that was already destroyed. This version was focused on creating something extraordinary from scratch. Speaking of Emma, I said, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. Oh? She asked me last week if you were going to be her new mommy. Apparently, she's been giving this considerable thought and has decided she approves of the arrangement. Sophia laughed, the sound filling the conference room with warmth. And what did you tell her? I told her that would depend on whether Sophia wanted to be part of our family permanently. James Thompson, is that your idea of a romantic proposal? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the ring I'd been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. No, this is... Sophia's eyes widened as I dropped to one knee beside Emma's chair, earning an excited gasp from my daughter, who immediately abandoned her tablet to watch the proceedings. Sophia Chen, you saved my life in ways you'll never fully understand. You gave me the opportunity to discover what I was truly capable of achieving. You showed me what partnership actually looks like when both people are equally invested in each other's success. Will you marry me and help me build something even more extraordinary than autoflow? Yes, she said without hesitation, pulling me to my feet and kissing me while Emma cheered in the background. Absolutely yes. As I slipped the ring onto her finger, I caught sight of Emma's delighted expression and felt a completeness I'd never experienced during my first marriage. This wasn't about filling a void or meeting social expectations. This was about choosing to build a life with someone who elevated every aspect of my existence. Can we have the wedding here? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. In the big conference room with all the fancy lights? We can have the wedding wherever you want, sweetheart, Sophia said, kneeling down to Emma's level. After all, you're going to be my maid of honor. That evening, the three of us celebrated at our favorite pizza place, the kind of casual family restaurant that Rachel would have dismissed as insufficiently sophisticated for a business success celebration. But sophistication wasn't what mattered anymore. What mattered was authenticity, genuine happiness, and the freedom to enjoy success without having to justify or defend it to someone who viewed my achievements as competition rather than shared victories. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Tyler got 15 years. Rachel's testimony was devastating. She's moving to Portland next month to start over with her sister. I showed the message to Sophia, who nodded approvingly. Justice served, and more importantly, Emma's mother can rebuild her life without criminal charges hanging over her head. Do you think I made the right choice? Warning Rachel about Tyler's scheme instead of letting her face the consequences alone? I think you made the choice that lets you sleep peacefully at night, and I think Emma will be proud someday to know that her father chose integrity over revenge, even when revenge would have been justified. As we walked back to the car, Emma skipping ahead of us with the boundless energy of a child who'd had the best day imaginable, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. Rachel's betrayal had felt like the end of everything when it happened. Now it was clear that it had actually been the beginning of everything that truly mattered. Choosing solitude over fighting for someone who'd already moved on had taught me the difference between being alone and being independent. Learning to build success without needing external validation had shown me what I was actually capable of achieving. Finding someone who shared my values and ambitions had revealed what partnership was supposed to feel like. What are you thinking about? Sophia asked as we reached the car. Just grateful, I said, opening the door for Emma before turning back to my fiancé. Grateful that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. No regrets? None. Rachel chose Tyler's company over our anniversary. I chose solitude over her betrayal. and that choice led me to everything I actually wanted but never knew I was missing. Sophia kissed me again, soft and promising, while Emma giggled in the background about how gross grown-ups were when they kissed too much. 6 months ago, I'd been a man desperately trying to save a marriage that was already over. Tonight, I was a man who'd built an empire with someone who understood that true partnership meant elevating each other rather than competing for attention. Rachel had been right about one thing. The business opportunity with Tyler had been too big to pass up. She just hadn't realized that the real opportunity wasn't the one she was choosing. The real opportunity was the one I discovered when I stopped fighting for someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth fighting for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply building something so extraordinary that you forget why you ever thought you needed revenge in the first place. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.